And those were my only comments this morning as well in reference to that item, especially that staff has done a very good job in negotiating and working that out. So are there any other comments at this point? Hearing none, all in favor of the consent passing that except for F2 and F3, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Those pass unanimously. And Commissioner Duffy, F2.
Thank you. I think Mr. Kearns made a very good point. The sidewalks are new on Rio de Janeiro, and I'd like to see what kind of accommodations we're planning to have, and can the design be done around the sidewalks in order to avoid ripping brand new sidewalks up and putting new ones in.
Mr. Hubbard.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gary Hubbard, Charlotte County Utilities. The contract that's proposed is with, of course, Jones Edmonds. They'll be evaluating different routes. Of course, we'll try to avoid the sidewalks and then other existing utilities.
Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. That was the one I was going to pull to discuss. Typically, and this is a force main contract, not a gravity collection contract, where you'd have a higher probability on a gravity collection system to get into the pavement area and so forth. Wouldn't it be, because this is a force main going down Rio, basically from, let's say, Deep Creek Boulevard down to Rampart, essentially, on this facet of the contract, it normally could be out in the grass swale area, correct?
That is correct. Normally the trench is about 4 feet deep.
And wouldn't we be able to specify that especially with Rio newly paved, that we could jet or basically
we could bore
under the road, under the sidewalks as well, right?
And yes, that is correct. And we'll evaluate all those options. And once we come to a final, we'll come back to the board with the results of our studies before the actual bid of the project.
Okay.
I think that's the only thing we want to try to convey, is that we certainly agree that that shouldn't be, we should not adversely impact the new infrastructure that's just been
we would agree completely.
And all this cost will be CCU. It will not be borne by the MSBU. Correct?
That is correct. It will all be CCU funds.
Yep.
Thank you. Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. I would just like to say that we also got an email in reference to this project from Mr. Brown, yep. And I also confirmed through Public Works that Public Works and our CCU staff work together to try to accommodate these things, and I appreciate those efforts and look forward to seeing what's coming back to us as we move forward. So, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. F3. It's noted, Commissioner Constance, that you're going to abstain. Does anybody else have any comments on this? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve F3. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And there's none opposed, but we have a 4-0 with Commissioner Constance abstaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. That dispenses with the consent agenda. Folks, let's move right into the regular agenda. R1, please. And I think that goes back to Mr. Hubbard. You're going to be busy now.
Busy day today.
Yes, sir.
For regular agenda, the first item is water demand projections for our Peace River system. At pre-agenda, we presented a graph of projections associated with Central and Western County. Our current demands are roughly 10.34 MGD. We used a level of service to estimate our projected uses from 2015 to 2035. Along with the level of service, we used the High Beaver population projections. That resulted in a demand in 2035 of 17.43 million gallons per day. Our current allocation with the Water Authority is 16.1. Based on those projections, additional capacity may be needed somewhere around 2028, 2029.
Commissioners, are there any questions? I have a few. Commissioner Constance, do you have?
I'll wait. Go ahead.
Okay. A couple of things. Gary, I know that Our actual usage is at 188 per ERC, 188 gallons per day per ERC, but yet we're using 225 gallons per day per ERC is our number. Are we not overdoing it using the high Bieber and having, I mean, I'm looking at that's a 16.5% buffer plus going to the 1.65 high Bieber rate. I'm wondering if a 10% number is not maybe better than using like 209 gallons.
We looked at the other members to see if we were out of line. They're also using that level of service of roughly 225.
And what
we
are
felt
their actuals compared to our actuals? Do you know what those are?
Not right up. What do you mean? Their actual the difference between
The difference between, like our actuals are 188 gallons per day per ERC on average.
Don't think I have that information right here with me.
Okay. So in your opinion, you think that our variance is acceptable and that 16.5% buffer plus using the high Bieber is okay?
I think it's prudent planning. We really don't know what's going to happen in the next 20 years as far as water use per ERC.
And we have the opportunity to adjust this by reviewing each and every year.
This is an annual projection, so we will be updating this as time goes on. Okay. I think it was interesting to note that if you looked at the existing usage over time, although we had the drop, during the economic downturn, if you extended that line to our projections, it's almost linear. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Yes. But again, we'll readjust this on an annual basis and move forward that way.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Constance?
Well, and I just want to bring out, we'll see the details in the Water Authority meeting, but our use for April of 2015 was 11.4 million gallons a day.
Right.
So we're not at 10.3. We're at 11.4 today.
Well, on average, over an annual period is what we, at 10.75. But yes, we have peaks, and we do see an increase. That's what that number in April is indicating.
Right.
Sure. Commissioner Doherty.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as we discussed at pre-agenda too, Gary, when you look at the delta between the high Bieber and the actual, what we're using on average at 10.3, we start off at the same time base at 12.5, gives you a 2.2 MGD cushion in the planning, right, which is probably, close to 11,000 ERCs.
It's 11,800.
Well, like I said, approximately.
Right.
And so basically, I think that, again, gives us a cushion if growth becomes more significant than we're estimating right now. I think it's a good idea at this point in time. And look at it.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir. I'll move approval.
Second.
A motion and second to approve. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Back to you, sir.
Commissioners, the second item on the agenda is the Second Amendment to the Master Water Supply Contract with the Water Authority. The amendment, I believe, is the result of the negotiations between Charlotte County and the Water Authority over the 1991 rebuild, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Constance?
Well,
I was on that.
how'd you know that I was going to be?
I'm reading your mind, sir.
I sat in pre-agenda yesterday with Mr. Lehman, Mr. Coates, and Mr. Manson, and actually this is not even an item on our agenda for voting tomorrow. It's just under discussion. It's for discussion under the council's comments. So I don't know that we need to move on this right away, and I think we need a little bit more time. My suggestion was going to be we could move ahead with the items that formalize the 91 rebuild language and all that other stuff, and push out Schedule C, zeroing out Schedule C for now, just to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row and we know that we don't want that extra water now or want dibs on that extra water. Because remember, the next 3 million gallons a day is going to cost $6 million. The anticipation is that 3 million of that will be paid by the state, 1.5 million will be paid by SwiftMud. So really, that 3 million gallons a day is only going to cost $1.5 million to create, and that's basically a drop in the bucket, no pun intended, but it really is the cheapest water we're ever going to see coming forward. And I will reiterate that for all intents and purposes, the Peace River Minnesota Regional Water Authority is our only water supply for Charlotte County. And while we do have a nice buffer now, that buffer is going to I think, rapidly shrink, in my opinion. And so I want to make sure that we have plenty of water. The cost estimates for the pipeline to bring the RO water from Burnt Store up to our area is now up to $28 million. That's another item in our discussion for tomorrow. There are 4 phases. Let me pull out the big book here. There are 4 different pipeline units, but they're all broken down. And let me see if I can find that item. Right, so it's item 6 on the agenda. And there's phase 1, which is the pipeline from the authority to Punta Gorda. Phase 2B, C, and D, which are all in Sarasota County going toward Venice. And then 3B, C, and D are from Manatee down toward Sarasota. And then phase 4 is the Burnt Store pipeline. My first question was, I know they're numbered in that way, but that's not chronologically how they're going to come out, and the answer was no, it's not. In fact, phase 3B and 3D are probably going to be pushed quickly because Manatee wants to be able to provide water down to Sarasota County from the north, and they're going to have to build that pipeline up there. And phase 4 is something that may come in line sooner, and the reason we brought it up was we're building Burnt Store Road phase 3. We have already included potable water lines, reuse water lines, and sewer lines under that roadway, and it is a 24-inch potable water line. So we've already put in place, as part of our construction of that road, that infrastructure, which is significant. There is some discussion about the, now that they've switched their use at Tucker's Grade and 75 to having residential units, bringing water to that location. So that may help us to pay for the west to east portion of that pipeline to get it over to their property, and then the last part of that pipeline is going to link up to the city from below. So this is all in flux, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to be looking at the fact that with the exception of that source, Peace River Water Authority is really all we have. And I'm very leery about giving up this last poker chip that we have, because once we give up Schedule C and we zero it out, we really don't have any leverage in any discussions about future water supply. And I'd rather have more water than we need and essentially own it and lease it back to the authority, sell it to other customers who want it as they grow, than to give it up now, and then when we need it, it's going to be very expensive.
And, well, I was just going to say, do you know, Commissioner Constance, what the timing is, and Ms. Knowlton, you might have to answer this, when we could zero that out? Because having the next opportunity, I think, is very important for us to be able to be in line for that, and I certainly don't disagree with that. But at what point do we zero this out so that when we don't want water, it's not forced upon us? Because at some point, that's what can happen, is the expansion of plant, as I understand it, at some point in time, if we still have Schedule C as it is today, we will be forced to pay for expansion that we may not need.
And before she answers the timing on that, and again, as much as I understand we don't want to pay for something we don't need now, I think it's important to have that additional water. And again, you're paying basically 25 cents on the dollar for an extremely inexpensive supply. So it's
that I don't disagree with today. That again, I think we have to figure out at what point in time, and do we have another window of opportunity to take advantage of zeroing out Schedule C, so that if we feel that we're confident we have, you know, plenty of water for, you know, to 2050, for example. Do we really want to be forced to expand plant that some other member of the water authority decides that they need to have, and that's the only way to get it.
Right. Well, and again, I don't, until the next 3 million gallons a day gets developed, we're kind of sitting in the catbird seat, and we're not asking for that water until somebody else wants the 0.6 million gallons a day left over that we're not entitled to, or 0.57.
Right.
So that can be adjusted. The point is that I don't ever think we're going to have an issue with zeroing it out. It's just a question of when will they decide the trigger needs to be pulled, and where will we be on our upswing.
Okay. Ms. Knowlton?
I would recommend that rather than parsing this out and revising, just approving the R&R and not Exhibit C, that we defer the whole thing till the next board meeting so we can have additional discussion on it, because it's my understanding that all of the other counties have already approved this item
That's
as
not
written.
correct.
It's not?
It's not correct.
Oh, okay. I thought that was
Only
the case.
DeSoto is.
Only DeSoto.
Oh, okay.
So we have plenty of time, in my
Right,
opinion.
right.
Well, I just
So I don't even
defer
want
it.
to, I don't even want to defer it till the next meeting. I want to give us at least 30 days. I think 30 or 60 days. I think the next meeting is in August for the Water Authority. We have plenty of time to see where the chips fall, and then we'll make our decision just prior to the August meeting.
Well, and we may not, I mean, quite frankly, we may just want to, we need to wait and see how things play out, I think. I'm not anxious to do it right now, but I don't know what our window of opportunity is. So when people start zeroing out, it only zeroes out once all four agree.
Exactly. This is one of those situations where all four boards need to agree at their meetings, and then they just basically pass their ballot forward to their members, and it's a routine vote at that point.
And I would concur with where we're going, that we pull C and move forward. Commissioner Doherty?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I concur also. I'm not comfortable with zeroing out C today. Matter of fact, a conversation with Ms. Sandrock yesterday, there might even be an option relative that's been discussed, I guess, among staff of not even having C. And there's some other discussions that might be worth having a discussion here about. But yeah, I think we should set the next discussion on this, the board meeting before the next Water Authority meeting. That should give us plenty of time. What's that, 2 months down the road?
And we don't have any meetings in August, so we
Well-
have to address it in July, or else wait till the meeting after that.
But I'm fine with that, too. I don't
So am
think there's any rush.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't think there's a hurry on this part, not on C.
I mean, another opportunity is we could discuss it at the July workshop, or we
There you
could
go.
just let it,
Yeah.
I think as long as we're talking about it, that's fine. I don't think that we're ready to make a decision yet.
I would agree. So,
Do you need a date to?
comment? Commissioner Deutsch?
Yeah, do we want to make it specific just to have it set for our last meeting in July? So because the Water Authority is supposed to meet in August, and we
we don't-
don't have an August meeting.
I don't know that we need to make that decision right away. I don't think, if we wait till September or October, I don't think it matters. I think everybody's going to be reviewing this and taking their time to decide what their avenue is going to be, and, I would just assume that we would want to stay in control of our own destiny for this next phase, and I think that's where Commissioner Constance is coming from, and I have to concur.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
What about a workshop in July, and then we go from there? Does that sound all right?
I'm okay.
Mrs. Sandrock, can we have room?
I got head nods.
That's fine. And Commissioner Deutsch, I was going to say, I appreciate your comments, and we can always discuss this under comments at any one of the future meetings, and then set a meeting, set a date to actually address it. So it's not like if we don't set a date, we're stuck. We can always bring it up under comments, and then,
Yeah, I think we're all of the same mindset. It's just, how do we get to go? But, but I think we all pretty much agree on that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we put it on the July workshop, and we go from there.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to put on Schedule C for discussion at the July workshop. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
all right, so are we, just point of information, Mr. Chairman, are we going to not separate it out and move forward with the rest of the, because it's all tied together. It's a master water supply contract amendment. So we could not address any of it, or we could pull out Schedule C and just address the rest of it, and then bring that back to the authority. Because again, we're not voting on it tomorrow. We're just going to have a discussion about it. We could then tell the other members, look, we have this, and we can do it either way. We can.
Can I make a suggestion that we not move on this right
Okay,
now,
that's fine.
and that we see what happens at the meeting tomorrow, and then we can have further discussion if we need to under comments to move it
That's
after,
fine.
at our
Just
next
wanted
meeting.
clarification. Thank you.
Okay, sound good? Very good. Mr. Hubbard, R3, please.
The next item on the regular agenda is the Water Authority agenda. Under consent agenda, the first item, of course, is minutes. The second item is a one-year extension of agreement with the Financial Advisory Services for First Southwest Company. They'll be looking for an approval of a one-year extension of the current agreement. The next item on the agenda is a one-year extension of agreement for investment banking services with Citigroup Global Marketing. Again, the motion will be to approve a one-year extension. I believe that probably will be modified, though, at the meeting itself. The next item on the agenda is approve a work order for Lake Susie Metering Station. This is a motion to approve and authorize the executive director to execute a work order to have the meter station improvements installed by Forsberg Construction in the amount of $121,190. And that completes the consent agenda. Under regular agenda, the first item is water supply conditions. It's a staff presentation based on...
Excuse me, Mr. Hubbard. Commissioner Constance would like to ask a question.
Yeah,
Sure,
can we,
I'm sorry.
can we address consent agenda first?
Sure.
Okay, so the only amendment I'm going to make to the minutes is I've asked them to please, under the comments about the legal fees, actually put line items about 2012 total compensation for Mr. Manson of $212 million, and then broken down for administrative, construction, and litigation, 2013, $446,000, and then the breakdown, and then 2014, $339,000, and then the breakdown. Because it's not in there. Plus, the attachments are there that Ceres did with all the information that was furnished to her about his billing, but they scanned in the documents, which are very hard to read online, and I've requested that they ask Ms. Knowlton for PDF versions, and that PDF versions get attached so people can blow it up and actually see the numbers clearly, because I'm sure they didn't mean to do it that way, but I want to make sure that it's very clear for the public. So that was the first thing. These extensions for the financial agreements, I just had issues with the compensation, but I've asked Mr. White to look it over. He feels comfortable, so I don't think I'm going to ask to amend it or lower it, but these are for one-year extensions, and the reason they're extending is because they want to get the bond issue done, but they really don't need to extend it more than about 7 months before we go back out to RFP. Mr. White, do you think we should just do the one-year extensions? Are you happy with these contracts? Because if you are, then I'll just leave it the way it is.
Well, the details as to the fees they're charging and rates they're charging strike me as very reasonable.
Okay.
They've been in place for Charlotte County for about 15 years for ourselves. As to 7 months to 12 months, I really don't have an opinion whether the extension of the contract.
And I don't know that we're doing any more bond issues immediately.
Well, that's
so-
the thing, is it's pretty irregular anyway. You might not borrow money again for 3, 4, 5 years, so.
Well, and the next item with regard to Citigroup, it really doesn't list any fees. It doesn't tell you what the compensation is. So is that a standard thing for the
It is
industry?
very standard because it's based on a per bond amount, the size of the bond issue, and it includes the commissions for salesmen and things like that. It's very standard.
Okay, very
And the numbers weren't that unusual either.
Appreciate that. And then I asked about the Lake Susie, and I'm just discussing about what happened at pre-agenda yesterday, about the meter, and I said, well, who does this serve? And they said DeSoto County. I said, well, then why isn't DeSoto County paying for it? And the answer was, well, it's R&R, and you know, the same thing happened with the meter on the north side of the river for the Phase 1A. We requested that meter go in, and there was money left over from that project, so the whole authority paid for it. Of course, 46% of that money would have gone back to us. So, you know, we did kind of pay for it with our money in some way, shape, or form. But I just wanted to make sure you understood how that all worked.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
thank you.
Back to the regular agenda. The first item is water supply conditions for the month of May. 28.1 million gallons per day was the demand. With withdrawals from the river was 19.48. The reservoir has a storage of 6.22 billion gallons. Considering the ASRs, that's a total of 10.62.
Mr. Chairman, a point of information. I think of note it's important to show people that we've had a very good year with regard to rain during the dry season. This is the first time we've gone negative and had to actually withdraw out of the water storage system, because for the entire 12 months since May of 14, we've had more coming in off the river than we've had going out to customers, and which is why we were at record levels 2 months ago. We've dropped a little bit, but we're about to hit the rain. We're in the rainy season beginnings now, so it's going to start shooting up again.
That's correct. They had a very good year. Rains at the most opportune times where they were able to withdraw from the river so they could continue to fill the reservoir. That's a very good point. The next item on the regular agenda is contract for legal services for Mason, Bowles, and Donaldson. This is presentation to the board, just action, no action required.
I'm sorry.
At least that's what the agenda says.
Well, it's because I think Mr. Manson actually furnished 2 options to us yesterday. So it's so close to the meeting that even at pre-agenda, we had kind of a meeting of the minds. I said, Doug, I don't think we have enough time to look through this and make a decision, and I'm probably going to ask that we postpone this. He goes, good, because that's what I was going to ask for. I mean, he's basically offered us 2 options. One is a straight $180,000 a year, or it's fees for service up to that amount, and then he'd have to come back to us and request additional monies for additional work. You know, I think I really would like to try to lock him into a set standard fee for the year. And yeah, if things come up where we have to hire outside counsel because we have other issues going on, as we will do with Ms. Knowlton, and we've got other attorneys involved, that's another story. But, you know, for the basic work that he's been doing, you know, I think that we should have a standard number. And I'll digress for a minute because it's only under the check register, some of the checks going out, and I was looking at what we're paying our political person up there, and I asked Mr. Lehman, what is she getting? And it's Diane, I'm going to recall her name now. I think it's Baltz, or anyway, she gets a set base of $25,000, but then she bills us additionally for additional work, and I said, well, I need to see those billings for the last 3 years. So I'll get that at the meeting tomorrow, and I'll see where we're at, and I'll get a look at that contract.
That should match up to a contract to see, yes, why it's
I just think
handled that way.
I just think we need to get a closer look at how things are being managed, and just look at all those. They seem small, but if you don't pay attention to the small details, then the big ones get away from you. So
25,000 small, what's the balance?
Well, you know, in the last two check registers, she's had about that amount of money for the 2 months. But then again, it was legislative session, so again, I want to see how things play out.
Very good.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Duffy?
Commissioner Constance, so you repeat that. Did you say that Doug said he would be willing to have a set annual salary? 80,000, did you say?
180,000.
180.
And you think that's do you think that's reasonable?
Let me get to the item here.
Billings for the last couple of years were far in
Pretty high.
excess.
Right.
Yeah, let me read this to you. This is to all commissioners, all members of the authority. I have attached 2 options for legal service contracts for possible discussion at the board meeting. Option 1 is a derivative of the Tampa Bay Water Contract for General Counsel Legal Services, which is a flat fee contract. After reviewing many of the contracts and retainer letters used by your government for legal services, I determined that flat fee for legal service is not typical in your area. Therefore, I've attached a second option that is a more standard contract with a defined budget and an extensive scope of services with an hourly rate and monthly invoicing. I'd like an opportunity to discuss the contracts with each of you prior to having it considered by the board for approval. At this board meeting, I'll be giving an update and asking the board to allow me until August to bring a final version to them after receiving input from you on the form and terms. So his first contract is for a flat fee, and his second contract shows the hourly. And Ms. Knowlton, you've received copies of this, have you not?
I have, but since we just got it yesterday, I can tell you I haven't addressed it in any great detail, but I think the second one is an hourly blended contract with a not-to-exceed figure, and then after a year, you go back and revisit that I think it's still the 180.
Right, it's still not it's October 1st, 2015 through September 30th, 2016 shall not exceed $180,000. For each subsequent agreement year, the authority board shall set the amount for the annual general counsel and legal services in the Exhibit A. And he lists his standard fees for hourly rate is $2.15 an hour blended rate for attorneys and $90 an hour for paralegals. Litigation rate is $3.50 an hour for senior attorneys and $2.25 for associates per hour. Yeah. So I don't know that we have, it's kind of quick, and I really want Ms. Knowlton to kind of get a chance to look it over, so I think that would be the direction.
I would agree. Okay.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a staff presentation. It's a summary of the 5 years of operations of the reservoir. The next item is another staff presentation from Manatee County discussing recent work at Lake Manatee Dam. This again is for information. Next item is a 5-year financial investment report. Again, a staff presentation. There will be a motion to receive and file the report. Next item on the agenda is a regional vision for 2035. This is future pipeline priorities and schedules that were discussed earlier. Again, a staff presentation. Then under the General Counsel's report.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Duffy?
Thank you. Under future pipeline prioritization and schedule, Commissioner Constance, would that be an opportunity for you to talk about this pipeline, this last loop thing that Mr. Lehman wants to do is,
Well, that's correct, and that's the reason I brought it up when we started talking about water supply, because that was what I was thinking of, referencing the fact that the phases, and if you go online at this point, those items should be populated in the packet for the authority, and that was another issue that I had with Mr. Lehman. You know, I was out of town this weekend at a medical conference, and I tried to pull up the packet and download it to my iPad on Thursday before I left town. Wasn't there. Tried all weekend long. Tried it on the plane yesterday morning before getting on the plane. It wasn't there. It's not appropriate, and that's something that I'm going to be asking to add to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. Is I want to have a discussion about the fact that if you can't populate that packet 1 week before the authority meeting, then that item doesn't go on the agenda. And you need to populate that packet and give everybody a full week so that commissioners and staff have an opportunity to look at everything. We may or may not have a meeting. We may have to call a special meeting. But the bottom line is we need that information before the meeting occurs, because this just can't keep happening. They have a good budget for staff, and if they need to rework it, then that's what Mr. Lehman needs to do. That's his job, but he needs to get that done a week before. We do it for the citizens of Charlotte County here, and it was hard to do in the beginning because that mindset wasn't there. It was the Thursday before the meeting. The citizens said we want it a week before. We're getting it done, and nobody says anything. We're making it happen. It needs to happen there too, especially when you're dealing with 4-member governments and multiple customers. Everybody has a right to see things in time so that they can send somebody to the meeting and make a comment about it.
have the other counties talked about this, that they want that? Have they asked for it?
And not that I'm aware of, but I'm going to bring it up. And I guess what I'd like, if we can, before tomorrow, I need information about the 4-member counties. When do their books close for their agendas? Because if that's the standard for everybody,
idea.
we need to know that.
I'm sorry.
But-
I wanted to jump in on that if I could. The issue I have, I try to get through, I don't just look at an agenda. That we get their agenda, and I try to go through the packet. And usually I take some time over the weekend prior to the meeting to do that. And again, I couldn't get it. So it was difficult, and now it's crunch time. So, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I got this.
I don't get enough time to digest and go through everything as I'd like to, so when I go up there and listen, I understand what's going on. And when you want to talk about it, I can't really put a whole lot of information into it because I haven't been able to get through all this yet.
Right, I got this document, this book, UPS'd over on Wednesday, Thursday, when was it, Nina? Thursday.
Yeah.
So this was available Thursday, it wasn't online.
Right.
Why is that? The only thing missing, there were a couple of, maybe one or two edit pages, and they added the two options for Mr. Manson. Those were the late entries for this.
And that's,
And so if you can publish that and then publish an amended version, that's fine.
right.
But my question really was about this pipeline.
Right.
And when we say, and we talk about it, and we say, we don't want this pipeline, we don't think it's necessary, it's a waste of money, do we have anything to back ourselves up? I mean, will Punta Gorda say, before tomorrow, we don't want the pipeline either? Do we have any way to prove that it's not needed and not
Well,
necessary?
It's
tied to their RO money.
far more complicated because it all comes down to SwiftMud wants that pipeline. And SwiftMud is tying the pipeline to the RO plant. And the language in the bill very specifically ties the two projects together. I want to say irrevocably, but there's always a way to do strike-through language at the last minute. But the bottom line is that the pipeline will be funded along with the RO plant. Of course, the pipeline will get built first. You know, I'd like to see the monies released for both things at the same time, and then you have redundancy in your system and an ability to loop the water supply. That's great, if that's what you want to spend your money on, SwiftMud. But the RO plant is the number one priority for the city, and as far as I'm concerned, for the county, because they're an important municipality, and that's what they want, and that's what they need. We can provide redundancy through that Burnt Store pipeline, if you really think about it. We can't loop water, but we can certainly provide additional supply if their plant ever goes down or there's an issue. Anyway, if it might be up by now, but it's page. It's page 3 in here. It's the 6th slide, and it talks about interconnection projects, and those are the phased pipelines. And again, the numbers don't correlate with timing. It's just how they're described. So I guess we can look online and see if it's available, but it's something you need.
What slide is it? I can tell you because I'm on it, and I just can't.
It's
in.
It's item 6, regular agenda item 6, and it's the 6th slide.
I'm not there yet. I'm trying to get there.
And is what's happening in Tallahassee syncing with that? Do you think they're still going to get their money for that pipeline?
It's all coming down to budget and prioritizing projects according to, the fellas and gals that are in charge of the committees and the bills they want to push through. If they get what they want, then they'll provide funding for the other items, and it's that kind of horse trading where they're.
It is horse trading.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If I can, I'll give you an update on that real quick. In my discussions with Senator Dieter yesterday, water projects kind of blew up. So that's going to come back. There's information that they are going to negotiate and try to come together on some things. But yesterday was not a good session for conferencing. It was very heated, and it was not a good process. It wasn't handled very well from, it doesn't matter from whose side, but it wasn't handled very well. And so today's a new day, and hopefully we can get updates again. That's a project that's very high in priority for a number of people, and I would expect that is all going to come together. It's the other ones I'm worried about, but I think that one will probably come together.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you give me a second, I'll just pull up that item to show.
I'm trying to get to that page
Yeah.
for
I'm
you.
trying to get to it, too.
Why you just can't click on the agenda item and go to it? I'm almost there.
All right, there it is. So if you look at the phasing of the pipelines, Commissioner, that's, if you hit Control Plus, you might be able to get that a little bit bigger. One more time, and then center it. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see the numbers, and you can see the diagram. Move it over a little bit more. And then just scroll it up, yeah.
Can I go ahead and, I'm going to yield to Commissioner
Sure.
Constable, Commissioner Deutsch for a minute.
I don't believe the letter and the phasing identification locks them in that everything is going to be done in that sequence.
Correct, that's what I wanted to make sure people understood. But I just want to show you that the phase one is the, I mean, these phasings go according to what maybe their original priority they thought it was going to be, but things are starting to jump out of line because they didn't even know phase 4 was on the map, and now it's on the map, and maybe it will even move up quicker because they're realizing, I don't think they realized until my meeting with them yesterday, that we've got infrastructure under the road in phase 3 of Burnt Store, and that goes all the way up to Zemmel, and that's significant. And now they're starting to have tremendous interest in that, and
Maybe we should get some dollar credit on that.
well, they were intimating some of those types of things. So, and it is the correct size. If you look, that's 24-inch pipe, and that's exactly what we.
I think that, you know, I know you're on top of this. I think that's something that we might suggest at some point, that we get some sort of credit for that. It's a dollar savings in
Well,
reality.
the point is this: if the choice is, I would say, based on that diagram, it's probably a third. Let's see. You know, that's probably a good third of the pipeline is going to be constructed. So we have a decision to make. Do we construct the rest of that pipeline and control our destiny with all the water that comes out of there? Or do we cede control of the pipeline and maybe even that water plant to the authority? I don't know that's the direction I really want to go. But the point is that it is part of the system. There are plenty of parts of this puzzle that are part of the system that are not owned by the authority. But that's one of the things I asked them. I said, I don't want an inventory of what the authority owns for the 4 counties. I want to know all of the water assets for the area, because that needs to be known when you're looking at a master water supply.
Considering our history with the authority, and I would tend to think we'll agree on this, I certainly would feel I want to control as much of our destiny as we possibly can, particularly when we're dealing with them, because, you know, our primary concern is water for the people of Charlotte County. And I think we would agree on that we want to have as much control, and we know it's limited, as we possibly can.
Right. But to get back to the phasing, I just wanted, for Commissioner Duffy, because she did ask, if you look, phase 1 is the pipeline from Punta Gorda down. 2B, 2C, 2D, that's all lower South Sarasota County, and that involves Venice, and that was the discussion about, you know, hooking them into the system and getting them involved, and then 3B, C, and D is all about Manatee. So it has more to do with geography and the way it's laid out than it does about timing, but then sort of phase 4 bumps to the bottom. So, but you had a really valid question, and I think without a visual aid, it's hard to conceptualize it, so that's why I had him put that up.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you.
Constance. Mr. Hubbard?
I missed one item on the regular agenda. The last one is the legislative update. Again, this is a staff presentation of the board priority list.
Right. And again, I've looked it up, and our lobbyist is Diane Sauls. S-A-L-Z, Diane Salz.
On to the General Counsel report. The first item is, again, the Second Amendment to Master Water Supply Contract, which we previously discussed. If you'd like to discuss further. Following that is the Executive Director's report. This is a status update. No recommended action. The first item is a tentative.
Gary, everybody's base rate went down by a little bit.
Yes, by a little bit.
Yeah.
The tentative budget for FY 2016, the authority is projecting a $135,200 decrease, I believe. No, that's an increase in their budget. Very small increase for the fiscal year. As you can see further in that table, there's a decrease in the annual base rates for Charlotte County, $51,408. But all members got a decrease. Following, let's see, then we have routine status reports. The first one will be hydrologic conditions. Next would be check registers for March 2015 and then April 2015. 4 would be the 91 facility rebuild project, status update on that. 5 would be water quality and training facility project. And then 6 would be the Peace River Basin report. That is a summary of the complete meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Are there any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. We appreciate that, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just one clarification. If you look at our agenda, it notes that the meeting tomorrow is in Sarasota County. It is, in fact, going to be in Manatee County. Just so the public knows that. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Thank you for that catch. Thank you for that catch. It's in Manatee County, not Sarasota. All right. Next up, Mr. Milliken, are you doing the introductions this morning, sir? Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, Commissioners. As you recall, in 2013, after an energy consumption audit, the board approved the county to embark on a visionary process to accelerate conversion of selected building systems to more energy-efficient materials and operations for guaranteed future annual energy savings. So today we want to bring to you several points resulting from that process. First, the results of the installation, the savings achieved during the installation process, some minor changes that occurred during that installation contract, and then to highlight FP&L rebates that were achieved by some of the improvements that are in addition to, over and above, the guaranteed energy savings through the contract. So this morning we have Brian Reardon with Siemens to give you a slide presentation on those items.
Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Commission, for the opportunity to be here. I'm proud to have the opportunity to review some of the project on behalf of the staff of the county that worked tirelessly with the Siemens team to put this project in and make it a tremendous success. We'd also like to point out Gary Chrysler, who's here in the audience, who was a representative of Siemens during the development of the project. He is with Siemens now in a slightly different capacity after a brief away from the organization, but he's available and part of our overall team to provide support if the county should need any of his assistance or support as well. Just from a quick agenda that we wanted to quickly cover a little bit of an overview history of the project for people that may not be either familiar or fully remember some of the details when we started the process. Review the scope, talk a little bit about the adjustments that Mr. Milligan had mentioned that came up during the development process, and then talk a little bit about kind of the performance of the project to date, as well as how we will track and show the ongoing performance of the project over time moving forward. Just as a quick overview, that in 2011, the Commission approved for staff to go forward and issue an RFP to select a energy services company to help support the county in investigating the opportunity to do a performance contract and then eventually implement that one. From an overview standpoint, the goals of the project were to try to provide needed improvements to county facilities, to try to reduce your ongoing energy and operational cost, to fund all of this work through energy and operational savings as opposed to through capital budget requirements, and that for all of those savings to be guaranteed, in this case by Siemens, after the course of the project was implemented. The energy audit agreement was put in place in December of 2012, that we began construction in October of 2013, and finished final acceptance of the project early this year, and began the guarantee portion of the process starting February 1st, 2015. Quick highlight of the overview of the scope. The majority of the project work was performed inside various facilities and included upgrading to your lighting control systems, HVAC systems, controls for your buildings, improvements to the building envelope, as well as improvements to your domestic water fixtures within the building to reduce water consumption. Additionally, at your Parks and Recs facilities, that we did sports lighting upgrades at the Charlotte Sports Complex. We implemented salt generators and VFDs at county pools at both Oyster Creek and South County. And we also put in at the South County Park a geothermal heat pump for providing heating for the water at the pool. As Mr. Milligan mentioned earlier, that it's not uncommon in a large construction process that there's sometimes small adjustments to scope during the course of the project, and this installation was no different. During the time period between doing the audit and implementing work, certain changes in the facilities or in the operations of those facilities necessitated small adjustments to some of the scope of the work. Those adjustments largely resulted in credits back to the county, as well as some small reductions in the amount of savings that would be generated in the project. And one of the items that's here following this that Mr. Milligan will discuss is a small change order to the project to reflect these adjustments in the scope and guaranteed savings of the project. The largest of the adjustments related to occupancy sensors. Most of these cases, what happened was that the county and Karen at the time, that their team had started to implement some of these things on their own. And so by the time that we got to that point, there were places where the controls just weren't needed anymore, and so we removed them from the scope. We also had some small adjustments with pedal valves and ICE 8000 or 800 machines. The pedal valves are automatic foot releases for large commercial sinks that help make sure that you don't waste water by leaving water running when you're going to other tasks. The ICE 800s are machines that help increase the efficiency of ice makers, that we had some areas where they were either no longer needed or fit well within some of the operations where they had originally been planned. And finally, throughout your facilities on the domestic water changes, that we just had certain areas where a certain toilet didn't need to be changed anymore, or maybe a faucet did need to be changed that wasn't initially in the project. As you can see, overall the changes in terms of the net impact between the increases and decreases were just about a wash, both in terms of the energy savings and water savings for the project. Cost-wise, there was really no impact here because the changes pretty much washed themselves out. The table here details the savings that were generated by the county during the construction period. As the construction goes for a large project like this, every time a piece of equipment is put in, the city started receiving the benefit of the savings generated from that equipment, even though we had not finished the overall project and had began the repayment process for the project. And so during that period of time that we had total utility savings of about $184,000 that were generated during the construction period. That there were also operational savings of a little over $15,000. And as Mr. Milligan had mentioned, There were also rebates that were not part of the guaranteed savings part of the program, but we were able to help secure for the county as part of the change-outs. These are mostly rebates associated with HVAC and lighting change-outs in your facilities, but those totaled a check back to the county or a credit back to the county against your utility bills of almost $43,000 that was not incorporated in the initial financial review of the contract. So in total, during the implementation part of the project, the city received, or the county, received almost $250,000 worth of savings generated for the project before the project was even finished. One of the key components of a performance contract is this idea that even after the work's done, the partnership between the county and the energy services company, Siemens, will continue throughout the term of the agreement. In the case of this agreement, it's a 12-year, I believe it's a 12-year term, but we will continue to measure and provide annual reports back to the county, tracking and ensuring that the financial returns to the county and that the performance of this system operates as it was guaranteed throughout the project, and that if there's any shortfall in that performance, Siemens will be there at our cost to make adjustments and corrections to make sure that the system is performing as guaranteed, and if not, we'll have to provide a check to cover those shortfalls to the county. And so there's a pretty defined process that we go through with this of measurement and verification of the performance of the project. And this process actually starts during that initial audit process when we were developing the project, when we were doing pre-measurements and making sure that we had a good baseline of how your systems were performing so that we had something to measure the new performance against to calculate those savings. During that audit process, we did those pre-measurements, we established the baselines, and we obviously determined what savings were going to be generated from the project. As the work was being installed, our engineers worked with the city staff to do post-measurements of the new equipment to make sure that the new equipment was commissioned and performing correctly at the time of install. And those performance measurements allowed us to generate that implementation period savings report that's been provided in the packet and that we just covered the highlights of those numbers. Moving forward on an annual basis, we'll continue to monitor the performance of the equipment and things that have been put in and provide a report back to staff and commission on an annual basis, tracking what that performance is on an annual basis and doing that ongoing requirement. And that if there are any shortfalls or failure in performance, then our team will be involved in correcting those issues and obviously providing financial reimbursement to the county for any shortfall. The tracking of this is done through a defined protocol that's defined by the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol. It's an independent standard, so this is not Siemens' way of tracking savings. This is an independent industry-accepted standard that's used, and that there are options that are utilized depending on the types of improvements. Specifically in this project, most of the work is being verified through what's called an Option A, our retrofit isolation method. And it's really pretty simple that we took those pre-measurements so that we knew what the old equipment was using in energy, and we've taken post-measurements and we know what the new equipment is drawing in energy. And so it's really kind of the simplest, most straightforward way to know how something's saved is look at what the old thing was costing and now track what the new thing is costing. And so the lighting controls, water conservation, the VFDs on the pools, HVAC upgrades, most of the items are being tracked in that way. Some of the items that we're tracking are through an Option E, or what's called an agreed upon savings, where we reviewed the savings analysis and computer models that were done for the savings prior to the project, and everybody agreed that those models and calculations were reasonable and that we kind of agreed to that within the contract. Generally, these items are done on areas where the M&V process is cost prohibitive, and so you find yourself in a situation where the ongoing monitoring and verification of the savings is more than what the savings is worth, and so that it's not a good investment to continue to do that when the computer models are very accurate and very reliable for those particular methods. Based off of those post measurements that we've done, the initial report also put in a projected what the first year savings for the project will be when we come back in the February timeframe of next year with the first year report. And what we're tracking there off of that is looking at projecting somewhere in the range of $226,000 worth of energy savings against a guarantee of $206,000 in energy savings. The operational savings of $46,000 and some $46,000 and some change. So a total estimated annual savings for that first year of $273,000 against a guaranteed savings of $253,000. So what we're projecting is the overall project is going to return slightly better than what the guarantee was, and that's pretty typical for these types of projects. This is kind of operating exactly where we would hope or expect that it would. If the achieved savings is a lot more than the guaranteed, then you feel like you kind of left something on the table, and obviously if it's less than is guaranteed, then something's not performing as we would have expected. And so this is almost ideal from what we would like to see from our perspective and to be able to present to the county for those projections and initial performance of the project. As certainly has been discussed and is certainly important for a coastal community like Charlotte County is that there's also a tremendous economic or environmental impact to doing this work. That annually this project is going to save millions of tons of CO2 emissions from the reduction of energy consumption that's going on in the county. And over the term of this agreement, over 32 million tons of CO2 will not be put into the environment that would have been otherwise. That's the equivalent of having that's the equivalent of, for every year of that term, having almost 170,000 vehicles off of the county roads in terms of the impact of pollution. In summary, on a top level, that this project allowed the county to implement $3.7 million of needed capital improvements to their buildings and parks and recs without having to spend money out of your capital budgets to do so. The guaranteed savings for the project will be over $250,000 a year, and we're already projecting to see a better return on that than what was guaranteed. So over the term of the agreement, in addition to the savings, the guaranteed savings needed to pay off the cost of the work over that period of time, there's an additional $500,000 of positive cash flow back into the budget of the county that this project will help generate. One of the exciting things that Siemens feels about this partnership with the county is the tremendous success that the implementation was for the first part of the project. The construction went very smoothly. The Charlotte County's team was amazing to work with, and their hard work was a tremendous part of the success that we had. And so I cannot thank Mr. Milligan and his staff enough and the team here enough for their contribution to this being a successful project. But the fact of the matter is that we really, in this first project, even though a sizable project that did a lot of work, only looked at certain parts of the county's business and operations and places where you're consuming energy and utility cost. And so we fully recognize and believe that there are opportunities to expand upon this first project based off of the performance and demonstrated success of the project, to expand upon this and create additional savings for the county and fund additional improvement projects, should that be the wish of the Commission to start to explore that with your staff and team. And so I want to thank you again for your time and attention. Certainly on behalf of the staff, I want to thank their support for the project.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, and I certainly speak for my colleagues here. I know that we're excited to see the results or what they were expected and then some. And I also have to comment, it's good to see Gary again. Welcome back. Does anybody have any questions of Brian? Okay. Nobody? Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, Commissioner Constance.
Yeah, I just have one question. So we are doing far better than expected, which is wonderful, and I understand this amendment is just so that we pay less toward what we were going to be paying because we didn't install those things, or they were already installed by the county, so there was no reason for you to reinstall them. We appreciate that. So we're saving a little bit of that $3.6 million that was the upfront charge that's being financed. We're making more money than the finance is costing us over time, so we're actually putting back almost $250,000 this far. What will our total additional savings be over the 15 years? Estimated.
The guaranteed would be an additional $500,000 worth of savings back into above and beyond the cost of the financing.
Okay. And then we had a projected date, sort of a break-even date. How much has that been moved up? Do you know?
That it would be probably in the range of about 9 months or so. I'd have to go back and look. Now, the project is set up on an annualized basis that your payments are less than the savings that year. So each year on a cash flow standpoint, you're more than breaking even on an annualized basis.
Right.
But in terms of a total investment standpoint, it would probably be somewhere in the range of about 9 months, but I would have to go back and look at the cash flows and confirm that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Doherty?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm ready to move approval of Amendment Number 2 of Contract 12-314.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the amendment. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you again very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one final comment?
You may,
I
sir.
do want to recognize India Monahan for FP&L's outstanding help in achieving the rebates that were a bit of a surprise, especially in the amount that they ended up being almost $43,000. So appreciate their work.
That is excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, commissioners, are we good? Do we need to take a break before we go to public
Can we
hearing?
take a 10-minute break, sir?
Yes, we'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll see everybody back here. Mr. Milliken, I think you're doing the presentation on this as well, are you not? Mr. Berger may have something to add since it's a budget item, but
Prearranged for Mr. Berger to do.
there we go. Welcome, Gordon.
10 minutes went quicker than I thought. So,
It always does, sir.
for the record, Gordon Berger, Director of Budget Administrative Services. Commissioners, the item that is here is for an adjustment to the CIP for the care facility expansion. The reason it's on public hearing has nothing to do with the project itself. It has to do with the fact that we are adjusting the budget. This is a new appropriation, and it needs to be a public hearing for it.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Berger?
Sir.
Hearing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this item may come forward. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Paula Hess, Care Board Chairman Emeritus. Let me sign in. This expansion of the county-owned care shelter administration building is necessary to the efficient provision of the services CARE gives to the victims of violent crime in Charlotte County. This includes shelter and advocacy for victims of domestic violence, rape, and all areas of violent crime. We assist law enforcement and the judicial system and take County 211 calls. By CARE bringing to Charlotte County grant funds to pay costs and volunteers to raise money and to help implement our 24/7 services, tax dollars are saved that would need to be allotted to county staff at a much higher cost to provide these essential services. For 32 years, this has been the case. Charlotte County, through CARE, was a leader in the state in the provision of victims of violent crime services. And I might proudly add, we still are. Now CARE has outgrown the 1987 building. The county's population growth over the years has increased our caseload proportionately. This expansion of the county building will make possible the maintenance of our excellent service standards for the people of Charlotte County. I respectfully urge the Commission to approve adding this facility expansion to the CIP project C191401. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, we move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. I would like to just make a couple comments, if you'll give me the latitude. First of all, to Ms. Tatarik and Ms. Hess, I'm sorry that you need more room, because that's not a good indicator in my mind. But I do commend you and everybody who's involved for all the efforts that you put forward. In pre-agenda, I had concerns about not this particular aspect of it, but of some of the costs. And Commissioner Duffy and I had some conversation about that. I've had conversation with Mr. Milliken. I've seen the breakdown. I understand the breakdown. I don't have any problems with it. But I would say that I encouraged him to hopefully get a better negotiate a better fee schedule for the architectural services, and that's something that he has agreed to. Obviously, they do anyway, but I'm pushing for that. And I don't know if Commissioner Duffy was first and then Commissioner Doherty.
I think she pressed her button first.
She did.
Thank you. I understand that we have to adequately estimate costs, construction costs, but when it sounds high to us, we get upset, we get alarmed, and then. But I also know that on the other hand, if the number was low and it came in higher, we would want to know why
we miss it.
Right. So I realize that, but what I would like to know is when we have situations like this where we're a little concerned about how we think something's coming in higher than we think it should be. When the cost is lower, I'd like to know that. I'd like to know what it did come in at later on. And by the way, it really didn't cost $300,000; it only cost $250,000. I'd like to hear that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I had a meeting as well with Mr. Milligan yesterday, and I'm also at a better place than I was at pre-agenda on this. It's important for the public to understand the $48,000 is not all architectural fees. It's 30-some-odd thousand budgeted for potential architectural and engineering support fees, and then other dollars in this estimate are for things like water connection fees with the city, I guess, and Swift mud fees and so forth.
City impact fees?
Yes, that's correct. So I think it's important, though, for as we move ahead in the future, Commissioner Duffy, as you're indicating, that we possibly break down, and I discussed this with Mr. Milligan and Mr. Sandrock yesterday, that we possibly break these things down a little bit for the sake of the public and for everybody, really, that we understand a little bit better as to what component is what, so that it's not, as it's listed here, it just says engineering, $48,000. It doesn't tell the story. So it's a communication issue for me. I think that will be addressed as our new capital projects manager is on board. And again, I think that overall there needs to be, I think, as we discussed again at pre-agenda, to try to find that fine balance where we put in a realistically conservative budget number, but we don't provide so that staff has got a tool in their toolbox to try to negotiate with the consultants, whether engineers or architects or whoever, and not have a number that's so comfortable that it's an easier negotiation. I think if we try that, I think it'll provide us an opportunity and a track record to see, like you said, Commissioner Duffy. We might have to see how it goes, and if we do tighten it up a little bit at this end of the game, we may find that we need to relax back again. But I'd really like the staff to have that understanding from the board that we're not going to chop their heads off if they come back in. I mean, that's the risk. It's easier to come in and be a hero and come in below budget. I understand that. It was in that role at one time. So just anyways, good discussion. I appreciate it.
Especially when you're bound by it.
That's right.
Commissioner Constance?
Mr. Chairman, I got a question, though. I'm just looking at the anticipated construction cost of $237,000 for 576 square feet. That's $411 a square foot.
There's 300 and some odd square feet of renovation as well.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that was concerning. There's 576 square feet of new construction, 300 square feet of remodeling, and so and then when you get into that, we've got fire sprinkler expansion that has to take place, and you have electric requirements that are going to have to be in there. So there are a number of things, and until we actually see drawings, it's kind of hard to bring those things to fruition as far as what the actual cost will be. And Mr. Milliken, if you have comments, you're certainly welcome to jump in.
I appreciate your comments. And the only other thing I would add is the site work also. We aren't totally sure whether additional parking is required, stormwater management, egress sidewalks for the additions and so forth. So there is site work as well.
Is this going to trip ADA too?
Everything trips ADA.
Everything trips ADA.
That's a given
Yes.
now.
Yes. Commissioner Doherty.
One final comment, Mr. Chairman. I do support what Commissioner Duffy said as well, is if we could, for a period of time, Mr. Sandrock, if you could come back with these types of projects and just give us an idea. I mean, we don't correlate between these budget adjustments and what the actual contract may be, and it may come in at administrative approval to below, probably will, where we won't see it until after the fact. It'd be nice to get a kind of a running track over 6 months of how do these budget numbers line up with reality when you actually get ready to sign the contract. I think that would help.
That's a good point, and I reviewed last week a deduct to the county paving of $1.4 million, so I was discussing with Mr. Quick about is that true savings, and there's a significant part of that there was.
Mm-hmm.
So, I agree. Those are the things we need to highlight.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of budget adjustment BA 15-035.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay.
Commissioners, the next item is we're bringing this item back to you to correct an advertising error. It is the Rotunda West Street and Drainage MSBU, eliminating the term limits for advisory board members and also requiring that they own real property within the unit.
I don't see anybody jumping up with questions at this point. I think we probably remember this from last time. So at this point, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward, sign in, state your name for the record. You have 5 minutes. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to close. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Charlotte County, Florida, amending Article 40 XL, Chapter 4-6 of the Code of Laws and Ordinances of Charlotte County, Florida, amending Section 4-6-842, providing for property ownership and eliminating term limits, amending Section 4-6-844, providing for eliminating term limits, providing for inclusion in the Charlotte County Code, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, folks, we're going to move on to citizen input on any subject. Anyone wishing to speak to the board on any county business may come forward, sign in, state your name. Remarks on county-related subject shall be limited to 3 minutes, shall be limited to be addressed to the commission as a body, not to individual members, and there's no discussion at this time. Anyone wishing to speak? Okay, hearing none, we will move forward. All right, Mr. Sandrock. Any?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a few operational changes. Mr. Travis Mordor is our new capital projects coordinator, and he will be on board with us starting tomorrow.
Very
so
good.
we will be working with him closely and not scaring him away. But he will obviously be involved in things like the sales tax project and get involved in the CCU audit and many other things related to the CIP. As you're aware, Mr. Harris resigned to move to the East Coast to be closer to family and new job opportunity. We asked Claire Jubb to step in as the interim director, and she did accept that yesterday. So that will be beginning June 26th.
Very good.
And Commissioner Doherty Doherty had asked me about providing an update on the sales tax, and we are meeting this week, and we'll be ready to do that at the June 23rd meeting. Also, when we were talking earlier about Exhibit C, I think it's important to not forget the work that had been done over the last 2 years to put into place a new process to replace the Exhibit C, which was really not so black and white. It gave different points of ways that you could put in that you needed water, but yet if you got to a certain point and you didn't need it, you could pull back without having to go through this process of zeroing things out. So I know Ms. Knowlton and I were talking about that, and we hope to, as we exhibit or zero out Exhibit C, that we put in place this new process. And then the last thing, I was up in Tallahassee last week on the evaluation committee for the legal services for the Gulf Consortium, and there were 2 finalists, Neighbors Giblin and Bryant Miller Oliver, and Neighbors Giblin 5-0 won the award. That won the award to make the recommendation. So, and I think they've been serving as the interim anyway. So, thank you.
Commissioner Deutsch, you're up.
Yeah, Ray, I have a question, specifically relating to Mr. Harris. I don't want to say nice things about Ty now. I do have a procedural question, though. I think, Ty's done a super job, and we're going to miss him, obviously. Do we have a procedural requirement when a department head would leave that it's appropriate for them to give us like a month or 2 weeks or something like that?
We do not.
Okay, I just would offer the suggestion for consideration. I would tend to think it's more administrative than come through us. But maybe when we contract with a person of a department head position, which has a lot of responsibility, we might say, listen, if and when it happens, we'd like a month's notice, only because it would help us a little bit, or some kind of minimal with the transactions. It's just merely a thought. I know that on occasion I've been some places where we've actually had a few positions that we would like to have or suggest a couple months' notice if possible. I don't know if there's any legal restrictions on that, but
I don't know about a couple of months. I think that's unrealistic, but I can tell you in the
Jeanette, if you were to leave, we'd need 6 months. So
you.
bear that in mind when
the
you offer your
industry, it's
resignation.
typical for 2 weeks is the standard, but when you're working with professionals, obviously, as much notice. I always tell my attorneys as much notice as possible. I'd like a month.
I always opted for a month. That's,
yeah.
That's
but I
why
don't think putting it in writing is just kind of.
Well, I'll leave that to Ray's discretion. I'm just saying that if we have a person of that kind of responsibility with so many people, just for future, being we don't have any guidelines, I think the month thing,
and
it just
Harris
helps a little bit
closer to a month. No.
Yeah,
but there's really, I think, I don't know that we can really control that. I mean, even if it was 2 days, what can we really do? But obviously, I agree with you, though. Director positions or any position is a key position. The more time, the better. So, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you. I have a couple things today. One, I just wanted to let the other commissioners know I had a great meeting with Commissioner Mayo from Sarasota, who is their representative on the Water Authority, and we talked about some really interesting things, and it was a very positive meeting. I told him basically I know that the perception among the other counties is probably most likely that we whine, but that's not the case at all. And then I gave him some examples of why we have had legitimate concerns about things that have happened over the years. We talked about the fact that we discussed the Water Authority agenda at our commission meetings, and he was shocked. He didn't know that. I told him about the pipeline that nobody wants and gave him a little bit of background on that. We talked about the executive director, who's been in that position for a very long time, and that very tight-knit relationship with Sarasota County, and you know what I mean. I talked about some very interesting things that we found out when we were talking about the 91 rebuild, and we had the audit done. Some things about maintenance, basic maintenance that had not been done over the years. I promised to stay in touch, and I think it was worth. I think I got a better understanding of where he's coming from, and so I think it was a good meeting. On the Regional Planning Council, Commissioner Doherty, as you know, are representing Charlotte County on the Regional Planning Council, and we have a meeting on Thursday, important meeting, to really talk about the future. And if you have the time to look on their website and look at the agenda, one of the things we're going to talk about is the future, and they have a pretty good presentation on there that gives specific information about what Tallahassee has done to regional planning councils and the things that are changed and not changed. But as we all already know, that the state will take over, the Department of Economic Opportunity will take over the regulation of DRIs, new DRIs, but already existing developments, DRIs will still be governed by the Regional Planning Council. Also, if they have a notice of proposed changes, they would still be handled by the regional planning councils. Then there's a lot of other things that they deleted and repealed and everything, but many of them are things that were dumb things anyway that nobody was really doing. No, the regional planning council is no longer responsible for this, but we weren't doing it anyway. So anyhow, but it does affect them. It does affect some funding. And this presentation also explains a lot of other things that they do for the member counties, and it talks about economic development. It talks about the alliance, which we all know about. In fact, that's gonna come to us probably. They're gonna be asking us for money soon. So anyhow, I just wanted to point out that it will be an interesting conversation, and I'm sure Commissioner Doherty and I will update you as we go along to see what we're going to do. I mean, we fund it as a county. I think it's about $68,000 a year. I think maybe more. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little heads up on that. Commissioner Doherty, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, and then I was going to try to solicit obviously some advice from our colleagues, Commissioner Duffy, especially those who have sat on the council before. The real word, I guess, that's sticking in my mind right now is the word relevancy of the RPCs. How can we look at the RPCs and redefine them so that everybody feels that they're relevant? That seemed to be the common theme when you listen to the discussion last meeting. The cities and folks that have been on the council for a long time we're concerned about some of the things that have to be done on a routine basis that time is consumed to do, but we're not maybe fulfilling the real mission of a regional planning entity. So I guess that's really what I'm looking forward to, is to see in that discussion on Thursday how that's going to shake out. But I really would appreciate some perspective from our colleagues who have sat there before on the regional RPC as to maybe some helpful hints as to maybe where we should start turning this ship. We do also need to probably get some idea from the other board members as to the potential sale of the building. That's going to be on the agenda for Thursday as well, I believe, right? So if we can talk about that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Commissioner Constance was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do want to address some of these things. I mean, if you look at the presentation, I've been thumbing through it while you were talking, Commissioner, and strategic regional policy planning, comprehensive plan amendments, existing DRIs, the hazmat stuff, you have to go over that, the transportation disadvantage programs. But I think the thing that the new mission for the Regional Planning Council has been and should continue to be political advocacy. Because really, you have the ace in the hole is that the 6 member counties and all the cities represent, almost a couple million people, if you really think about it. And that's a determined political voice. And we need to leverage that legislative committee. We need to leverage that where the counties and the cities involved say, yes, we back our representatives who go to those meetings, and we back up what the Regional Planning Council wants from the legislature. And so whenever you guys get something together and say this is important to us, you have letters from all the cities and counties backing you up in that packet that goes from the chairs and mayors of everybody involved to go along with that letter, so they can't ignore you. It's very important, because what gets done at that table affects the region. Speaking to the alliance, that is not a Regional Planning Council entity. That
You're
is
not saying that.
I know, no. I'm agreeing with what you were saying, and we are going to have to deal with that. That's an FGCU Collier County alliance of two entities in the region. And I, tongue-in-cheek, was speaking with Mr. Patton, and I said, Tom, tell them we're happy to give them $100,000. And I told this to the ECEC folks yesterday. We're happy to give them $100,000 and be part of this. They need to put their offices in Charlotte County. And then they can have their meetings here, and we're part of the deal. Otherwise, not interested. So I don't really think that's going to have a lot of traction. And it's interesting to see how they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. They didn't get anywhere with the Regional Planning Council when I was there. They're still not getting anywhere. Now they're trying some end-arounds to try to repackage themselves for us. But at the end of the day, it's not a regional entity, and they're not playing fair. If they really want to look at the region, honestly, Charlotte County is the Wild West. We're the area that is undeveloped and has the place, the sort of unlimited footprint by the airport. We're ready to roll. All these other places have way too much density already and way too much stuff going on, and they're going to have to shoehorn things into their existing infrastructure or put them way the heck out east. Whereas we are here with an airport right by the highway, right by the rail system. We're the place that they should be saying, hey, we're a region, and this is the place where you really should be looking to put stuff. Well, obviously, they have a lot of self-interest, and we have nothing to do with that. So I agree. This is important, and I think that at the end of the day, this entity can't go away. And if you want to address the building, I guess my question is, well, if you sell it, where are you going to go?
Well, okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. But I do have Commissioner Deutsch waiting in the wings.
Okay.
All right, thank you. It's a procedural.
That's all right.
Well, it's a point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Deutsch.
It may be a procedural question, and I think somehow we may have abrogated Mr. Sandrock's comments, and we haven't had Mrs. Knowlton's. I like the discussion. I'd like to get into it.
Mr. Sandrock was completed. I did skip Ms. Knowlton, and we'll get back to her.
Oh, okay. So if you want to go ahead with this discussion, it's fine, but I thought we sort of passed over Jeanette's comment.
We're in the middle of one. I'd like to finish this, and then we'll go back to her. Commissioner Doherty?
Yeah, I think on the building, I'll address that in a minute or so. I think back on the mission, though, of the RPC moving forward, I think that I guess what's been a little frustrating is the topics that have been on the agenda for the summits have been true regional initiative type things, transportation discussions, National Flood Insurance Program, Waters of the United States. I don't remember us ever talking about Waters of the United States down there at RPC, or the National Flood Insurance Program. It may have come up on other meetings. Those are the types of things I think when we're moving ahead, we should start looking at those issues. And I agree, Commissioner Constance, politically, the base, that becomes a really strong voice in conjunction with the summit. And those are individual counties getting together. The summit may encompass other counties outside the Regional Planning Council, may go beyond. Who knows what that will end up being. That's kind of an informal get-together type deal. But the official entity being RPC certainly should step up to the plate and be more involved as a region on some of these issues. I believe. I think that's where you're heading, right? And
if I may, Mr. Chairman, yeah, and that's the point. I mean, certainly Finance Committee is very important. Yeah. Executive Committee meets every month. That's important. But for me, the most important critical committee is the Legislative Committee. Yeah. And having a good, an engaged chair for that committee who is really in touch with the issues that affect the region and sort of secondarily RPCs. I mean, it is important. You need to be advocating for your existence, which is crazy in my mind, but that's where we're at.
That's right.
But you need to be in touch with each of the municipalities, have a sort of a mandate that you have a representative, almost have a, it's almost like the entire board should act as the subcommittee. So you have the subcommittee meet, get through the meat of the issues at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then bring it forward, and then that needs to be a substantial part of your meeting, is talking about legislative. And one of the things that we were able to do while I was there was make it understood that you don't really have legislative committee meetings, you know, a couple months before legislative session, and it's kind of a rubber stamp. It's an ongoing full year cycle where you're talking, especially this year where it's going to be coming right back up again, and we need to get those legislative agendas from the counties and cities way in advance, you know, have a deadline, and then move forward through what you're going to be doing. And unfortunately, because there's not much of a budget, you don't have a lobbyist. You have to have that group.
We'll have to participate. Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I think, and Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, Commissioner Constance. I think, Commissioner Duffy, I think that gives us some good talking points for Thursday. It's going to be an interesting conversation with everyone.
One thing, though, just to respond to what Commissioner Constance said, you're absolutely right. It's important for advocacy. It's very critical. But the legislators don't listen. They don't listen to the counties, and that's pathetic. And here's the example, getting rid of DRIs and taking it back to DEO. And Commissioner Mann, in the words of wisdom of Commissioner Mann, did say, he said, somebody in Tallahassee is really mad at somebody around Florida, whoever I don't even know who put this bill forward, but he's exactly right. You know, and sometimes one person in Tallahassee being mad can change something that affects the entire state of Florida like that. And the other senators and representatives went along with them. And so now it's going back to DEO, and that, I mean, my only one real experience with DEO was in a conference call last year that shocked me. I mean, the power that those unelected state workers have is incredible. Just like that, they make decisions like that. But anyhow, so maybe we all have to start looking at this in a different way. Maybe we have to start doing things differently. Think outside the box. Find a way to get their attention, demand their attention. Maybe, you know, not in Tallahassee, but you know me, I've been saying this to us for years, and I still haven't gotten there. But anyhow, but we'll have a good discussion on Thursday, and then Commissioner Doherty and I'll keep you posted on this. Next thing I want to talk about again is landscaping. We're making some progress. And I wish I could find it, because I saw an email recently that one of our staff members sent to a citizen who I had a meeting with that was great. And it talked about all the things that we are doing. We are doing a number of things already and have things in the works. But a beautification program, I'm getting more and more people saying 41 looks terrible. They're really frustrated. It's the mowing. We're getting that fixed. The problem that I found out why the mowing wasn't looking great is because we had reduced the cycle of mowing so low that it wasn't getting mowed enough. So we've upped the cycle. But there's concerns about how some of the businesses look. I've talked to people about, and I'm not saying this is something we should do, but should we provide incentives to businesses to fix up the facade of their buildings? We do have 3 or 4 buildings on 41 that are doing that, and they look really nice. That's a good start. But we do probably need to work on some kind of a project where beautification of 41, or how far out in the community it extends, I don't know, but I've heard from several people, and then I saw there was a great letter to the editor today, and a woman by the name of Janice Tobin wrote a really good letter to the editor. She not only laid out why we need it, but she actually gave examples of the type of committees that would be needed if we had a group of citizens, county staff, business owners to get together and do it. I talked to the ECEC people yesterday. They thought it was a good idea. That was before I read the paper today. And they think we could raise some money to improve landscaping from the business sector And then my thought is maybe we could match that, depending on how much they can raise and what we can do in terms of buying some bushes and trees. And so I'm thinking in that direction, and I'm more than willing to help get this started if the people in the community who are upset with the look of 41 want to get together. I'll be happy to set up a meeting and help put people together and see if this is something that we can handle as a community and go from there. Gary Roberts did a great story this past week on trees, and people in the community don't even realize. Businesses hire tree cutters. They come and start cutting down their trees, and they don't even realize that the business owners don't know that they have to get a permit. You can't just cut down 30, 40-foot oak trees just like that. And Dr. Berger, who's on the Parkside Board, has been working really hard on that. So I salute him and everybody else that's working on this.
Well, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Constance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that's a very important point. And I got to tell you, I happen to know the situation and the person involved, and the owner is very upset because he got bamboozled. So we need to figure out how to get these tree operators to not come in and just say, oh yeah, we can trim this all up and it's all fine and don't worry about it, when in fact they should be the ones who absolutely know if they're licensed, they need to get permits. And if they're not doing that, we have to have some really harsh penalties where at the end of the day, if they mess up, they're going to be out of business.
Well, I looked into that, and you're right. I agree with you. Many of the tree service companies in the county do know what the regulations are, and they follow them, but there are a few that do not, and the one in particular in this instance, actually, after that location happened, they were seen a week or two later cutting down trees somewhere else, and code enforcement they were on it. So the problem, though, is the owner of the property is really the responsible party, not the tree cutting company. But but Ty Harris and Sean Cullinan have been working on that to find out what kind of penalties can we put on the tree companies that are just doing it without permits.
Well,
they're looking at it.
But the point is, if they're a licensed contractor to be doing that, they need to not just have fines imposed, but they need to understand that if they're caught doing something illegal, they're going to have their their license pulled. You know, we're going to do what we need to do. So,
that
Mr.
has
Chairman,
to go through the Construction Industry Licensing Board. So that's a process that they handle. So it's a citizen advisory board that handles that. So when people are found in violation and complaints are filed, they have to correct, or they end up showing up in front of that board, and the board then has the authority to, I believe, impose fines as well as, revoke somebody's license or suspend.
Well, if members of if the landscape committee can go to them and come to one of their meetings and express the fact that we really care about this, if we can have you, Mr. Chairman, actually write them a letter stating that this is something that's critically important to Charlotte County, and we want them to make special focus about this, because once those heritage trees are cut down, it's done. We will not see them again in our lifetimes. So it's something that they really need to focus in on and make sure that these landscaping companies are aware that the radar is hot, and we're watching them. We're watching every step they make, and they better be pulling permits for everything, because we really want them to have a very swift stroke of justice when it comes down to, hey, you know what, you violated. This memo went back out to you guys. You understand that this is a focus area that we're looking at now because it's important to the economy of this county, and we want you folks to be adhering to the law, and if you don't, you're going to be out of business.
Commissioners, if I may, we are addressing the issue. We're looking at the whole thing to see what we can do to prevent it and whether they're even required to have a license. And maybe that's the fix for it, is to start requiring them to have license. So we are on top of the issue. We'll bring back a report to you.
Yeah, because the landscape folks, especially for residential, you can go in and do landscape maintenance, and it's a handyman license.
Right.
And if it's a clearing permit or a clearing company, they have to be licensed, and of course they know they have to pull permits. As we've seen on Manasota Key in Sarasota County, people remove mangroves without permits. Yeah. So, I mean, you've got bad actors. and we can create all the legislation, all the regulations in the world, you're going to have bad actors, and it comes down to enforcement. So I think it's finding that right combination and putting some teeth in that's going to make the difference. If you would allow me some latitude, I'd like to wait and see what they come back with before we move forward, and maybe even an open letter to the newspaper to put out for landscape companies and residents and business owners to read might be another avenue to help spread the word.
Well, I just want to, make sure that if everybody understands, I appreciate Commissioner Duffy bringing this up. I'm underscoring her drive toward this, and I think that everybody needs to understand that this board is in lockstep about the fact that this isn't going to happen anymore, and we're going to be watching very closely, and if we have to act, we will. So I absolutely would appreciate you sort of looking over this, and we'll wait to hear back from the attorney.
Okay. My next comment is on the, I was at a EC meeting last week, and I sat with a Punta Gorda City Council member who was questioning me on the situation where they have filed a complaint against us on our comp plan as it relates to excavations. And I'm not going to get into any details because I know it's now a legal matter, but I do think that they are getting bad information. In fact, it was actually corrected right at our table right there where they were under the impression something was this way, and they were informed, no, that's not the case at all. So it's, I think, a matter of education, a clarification, and it's unfortunate, but I do believe that they've gotten misinformation. I said that. I am also very upset about Ty Harris leaving. He is a great guy, and it's been so great to work with him. He's really brought so much to our planning and building departments. He's really embraced our whole idea of open for business, and wow, he's going to be sorely, sorely missed. But I understand his family, and I don't blame him, so good luck to Ty Harris. I think you're a great guy. And then the last thing is, yesterday the ECEC people were here, and they did make a suggestion. They said that apparently a lot of business people would love to come to our commission meetings and make comments, but they're working, and they don't have time to sit here till the end of our meeting to make their comments, and I understand that. And they suggested that we have some kind of time-certain arrangement. Today's meeting, it's 11:15. We would probably be finished. We will be finished probably by noon. Maybe that would be appropriate, if we said we'll always have comments at 11:30, even if we have to stop and go back or something. But I think we should give that some consideration.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I agree, and they spoke to me as well. And I think that what occurred to me was, look, we have, and this is on any subject, so it's not related to the agenda of that day. Why don't we have it time certain at 1 o'clock the day that we're doing land use at 2 o'clock?
Right.
And it's just once a month. And, we open it up, and this way, everybody has an opportunity to know that at 1 o'clock, they come out, they fill out a card, and if it goes till 1:30, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we'll just push land use back until, we hit land use. But then it gives everybody a time-certain ability to come in here, because that's the biggest complaint I'm hearing. I have a lot to say, good and bad, but I never have an opportunity because I'm working.
Right. And I had that same conversation to jump in with the once a month at 1 o'clock. And they, that was something they said, we want at least one time a month to have that conversation. So I think that's something to discuss.
I like it.
I'm getting nods from everybody.
And I mean, but I'm saying, I like that idea, but not in addition to what we have, in place of what we have.
It'll be, on land use day, it'll be at 1 o'clock, period.
Good. I like that. So
I'm okay with that.
Add that to the next meeting as an agenda item? Is that what we would do?
I don't think we need to, do we?
I don't think you need to go to that extent. I don't believe our board rules specify what time
No.
that's going to occur.
So
I think you
every
need to
meeting
do
will
that.
have public comment on agenda items
No,
at the beginning of
on
the
anything.
at the beginning of the meeting, every meeting. But this is public comments on any item will be once a month, 1 o'clock on the fourth Tuesday. Everybody's nodding their heads on that?
Yes.
Okay, sounds great.
Otherwise known as land use day.
Land use day, sounds good.
I'm sorry,
I'm finished.
Okay.
Thank you.
since I skipped over Ms. Knowlton, I'm going to go back to her and let her, she's got some items.
Except for June 23rd, when we have a executive session scheduled for 1 o'clock.
So we can.
Or I guess you can do it and we can do executive session later.
We can.
I think that's land use day. We'll figure it out. I just have one quick item for you, and that is on DJJ. I think I've mentioned this to some of you in our private meetings, but as a reminder, last summer we decided to withhold all payments to DJJ depending on the outcome of the rule challenge. In February, during the legislative session, based on some of the comments that you were hearing from Tallahassee, you decided to make partial payments of $18,000 a month. In the end of April of this year, the judge ruled on our rule challenge. I've already given you that update. It was a mixed bag results. And at this point, staff is recommending that we go back and true up, make the payments for fiscal year 14-15 that are outstanding, based on we've done everything that we could on the rule challenge, and we're also hearing from Carrie Roth in Tallahassee that her recommendation is that we go ahead and make the payment. The other problem is that they've already taken some action. There's some language being proposed that basically says with DOR is required to deduct any outstanding amounts from shared revenue funds if we haven't gotten current. So that is out there, the clawback provision, and if we don't go ahead and do it, I think they're going to do it to us. So that's our recommendation.
Commissioner Deutsch?
On the other side of that coin, what about the money that they owe us? I mean,
that hasn't been addressed.
Actually,
we continue to.
Yeah,
Actually, it has been addressed, and the language is no repayment. That's what I read this morning, is no repayment. 5743 counties are on the hook for 57%.
because I was thinking, we should have a credit and deduct that from what we owe, and I think that's what got us started in the beginning.
Well, and Roger Davis is here in addition to Emily, but I believe our credit has now been reduced to $169,000, and we owe for 14-15 approximately $496,000, almost $500,000.
Emily?
Okay, good morning. That's correct, Commissioners. What DJJ has done is taken the revised rule, they've gone back and applied the 57-43 split back to fiscal year 2008, figuring out how much the counties have paid versus how much they should have been paying based on the rule. And that's where the revised numbers come in. And that did reduce what DJJ owes to us down to $169,758.07.
Emily, if I can interrupt.
Sure.
And ask this question. So they're changing a rule, making it retroactive, and what's been upheld in court, they're just throwing out.
Well, I think DJJ would argue that it has not been held up in court. So I think we're still on that side. I don't know, Jenna, if you want to.
The first DCA ruled with the counties, and it's up on appeal still for 09, 10, 10, 11, and 11, 12.
So your staff's recommendation is only to bring us up to current for the 14-15 cycle, and at what percentage? What's been upheld at DCA?
Yes.
Which was what percentage?
It's based on the 57-43 split. And that will become, that, as Jeanette indicated, has been implemented into proviso language on the criminal and civil justice appropriations bill, and that clawback provision has been put into place. So when that passes, it really won't matter if we have taken action or not. DOR will go and look at DJJ's accounting on what counties have paid, and they will be able to pull this money.
So they're going to use the 57%, even though it's not been upheld. Right now it's not. That's not the percentage that the DCA is upheld, and even though they've appealed that.
Correct.
I don't like giving them more, because I still think that this is new legislation, and it needs to be from here going forward, and backward it needs to be held up at where the courts have upheld it.
Correct. The 14-15 payment is based on what we owe currently. It's not based on any 2008, 2009. It's just
but it's
for
using the
this fiscal year.
57%, correct?
Correct.
Which is not in place today.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Deutsch? I'm sorry, Emily. It
Chairman,
worked the wrong way.
I was going to ask a question because I absolutely agree with you, and I think my concern is from what I understand, what's being questioned is the ability of the legislature to go back retroactively and impose an increase upon us. Now, that's my understanding on it. Where do we stand with that?
On this, on the big issue on.
I'm not looking at going
for-
forward, Jeanette. My concern is,
We challenged the rule, and it was a mixed bag of results. And on the biggest issue, we did not prevail. The counties did not prevail on that bigger issue. So the only other piece of information I have for you is that Sarasota County has already, it's the only one that I'm aware of, unless you all know.
The only one that I'm aware of as
that
well.
have voted on the issue, and they have voted to come current for 14-15, based on DJJ numbers.
So in reality, this is, we talk about unimposed mandates, but, here we have the state turning the calendar back and giving us an increase retroactively. And I can't believe how the courts have gone ahead and supported that.
You need to insert that this is not really based on any percentage, so to speak. It's based on number of days. And what the second court ruling came out and said is that there's certain number of days that were not being charged to the county that should have been. And so they've gone back and figured based on that as well. So.
Commissioners?
Does this need to be moved forward as an item at a meeting, or do we just need consensus?
We could take a motion here if somebody's,
If we're going to take a motion here, then it really should be added to the agenda, then
okay.
technically, but just by consensus. I was just giving you the update that that's how
Could
we
be put on our
intended
next
to
meeting agenda.
proceed.
Right, so here's the thing. We got FAC next week, so we'll get the final sort of read from that group, and then we can just bring it back the second meeting in June to discuss it and then move on it.
Roger, when is our payment due? The monthly payment?
The payment is actually due June the 1st, and there's a balance that we show of $478,472.76.
And that's currently in
That's current with the 57%.
Right,
So bringing-
but we have that money set aside also in anticipation.
In some way we do, yeah, in our budget.
I thought we did.
Knowing in the event that this could happen.
Right.
So, we're too late for June. Let's just do it for July 1st. We'll talk about it at the end of the month.
Yeah, we may put it on the next meeting.
Yeah.
And we'll be ready. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Are you good? Because I thought you were done, but then you,
July 1st, DOR can take action.
microphone.
That's why somehow we jumped, because I thought Ray was in the middle of his report. I had a question on that specific item regarding Ty and our
Do
procedure.
you have anything else further, though? I just want to
No,
make sure
I'm
I came
fine.
back to you.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Constance?
I don't think I have anything. We've gone over the Water Authority. Commissioner Duffy brought up the 1 o'clock thing, which I think is a great idea. I think I'm good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
Commissioner Doherty?
Yeah, the only remaining item is the building, RPC. We were talking about here earlier. And they're exploring, I guess the chairman and the executive director are exploring the feasibility of selling that structure. I guess they've had some discussions with a realtor. Ray's had a meeting with the executive director. I just wanted to kind of share that with you all this morning. I guess we all own, all the counties, 6 counties own the building. There's some sort of an agreement on that, which I've never seen. I want to explore all that, want to explore the options. If it is sold, does the proceeds come back to the individual counties? Does it go into the RPC checkbook? I don't know. So there's a lot of questions I've got right now, and I think that's what we'll explore on Thursday. And we really do need to come to grips with, does it make sense to own that structure? If not, where are we going to go? And what are the options? And I think Mr. Sandrock has had some discussions with the executive director on that as well. So there might even be a location in Charlotte County that might work for the
There was
RPC.
also some comments about at the RPC meeting, because I was on that call.
That's right.
And they did have some information there. Commissioner Deutsch?
That's sort of where I was heading. I think, first of all, if they're going to sell the building and they're still going to exist, where are they going to go? and what happens to the money? And I don't want to hold my breath and wait for them to show up in Charlotte County and rent space here. So, or are they looking for free space?
They may be. They could be looking at everything, like even a lease back, sell it and lease back a certain amount of space there. Who knows? But I just wanted to alert y'all that that's being discussed on Thursday, and be aware that Commissioner Duffy and I will be coming back with a report on this and let you know.
We talked about this the other day, and I was curious about what's precipitating the interest in selling. Maybe if they wait 6 months, they could get another $250,000 for the property, or I don't know. But what's precipitated the movement of the thought to sell? Can you enlighten us on that, Ken?
No, I don't know, Ms. Sandrock. Do you have any insight on that with the executive director?
I'm not sure that I know what the motivation is. I think that there's been some discussion. They have 3 employees. They have a large building. They had some lease space that they've lost. It's an opportunity for them. They purchased the building for $1.4. They are looking at a potential lease back, and I brought up the suggestion that really, you should potentially look at the counties, because we certainly have space over at CCU, It's close to the interstate. And the executive director did want to explore that. But I just believe it's that somewhere there's been discussion that should they really be in the business of owning this property when they really don't need the space at this point.
Commissioner Constance?
Yeah, and I think part of the issues started probably 5 years ago. They had the MPO, the Lee County MPO was there, so they were leasing space, so it made it a very viable operation. And then there was a fallout between RPC and Lee MPO, so they left, and I believe they're down at Daniels Parkway now by the highway. So, at this point, they don't have a tenant, and if that's the interesting thing is if Lee County government could figure out a way to put something in there, it's close by, that might solve their problem. That would be a good thing to look at. And I think at the end of the day, if they decide to sell, this is probably a good time to do it. As the next year or two goes on, it'll fetch a price, but they need to have a landing zone. They need to have some place that they are sure to be able to go at a reasonable rate, and then CHNEP is part of that too. So they're not?
No, they're in Punta Gorda now. They left.
Oh, that's right. They're in the
Yeah,
city.
we voted
That's
to
right.
move.
That's right. So that's another.
Our RPC is the only thing in that building.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, Senator Benaquisto was up on the second floor for about a year, and then she left. And I don't know if you've ever been up in that second floor.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's huge, and it's a nice space, and she wasn't even paying that much. That's the other thing. She was getting a very low rate just because they wanted to have her in the building. So, it's an issue that needs to get discussed. Appreciate you bringing it up.
Yes, sir. I'm set, sir.
Thank you. If I can add to that, there's potentially three interested parties in this, and I'll voice my opinion now. I think they need to sell the building. I don't think they need that big place, and I agree with Mr. Sandrock that a landing zone at Eastport or something along those lines makes a world of sense. There's no sense, and besides that, we're going to have to be putting money into the RPC as it sounds. Let's take the revenues that would come back to us from the sale of that building, and let's put that towards the operation of the...
Just to put you more to reality, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of revenues. It'll pay off the debt, and there might be a little bit more money coming back, but they haven't paid off. There's still at least $1 million, I think, owed on that building.
900,000, yeah. There's going to be some come back, but whatever it is, instead of divvying it up to the counties, if we're going to have to put in, let's leave it in the operation of it so we can budget out the line for what it's going to take.
I think you're on the right track. I think it's a great idea, because I do think that would be a great location right on I-75, but I don't think those Lee County people are going to come up here. If you think about it, when we have our meetings, we have Sarasota, Charlotte, and then you go down south. But Sarasota never comes to the meetings because it's just too far for them. It really is. It's 50 miles.
They come to some. Commissioner Hines is there for some of them, or was. But, you're right. A lot of times they're on the phone. And what will happen is the dynamic would change, and you'll have a lot of the Collier County people on the phone. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Alliance wants to buy the building.
Yeah.
Jones Loop.
They have money.
Okay. I have a few things here, and I will try to speed through these quickly. One of the things that, and I thought I brought this up before, but I would like a consensus from the commissioners to bring a proclamation forward in reference to the Stepping Up program that NACO has going on. That is an item that is something that I take very seriously. I speak every year, and Commissioner Constance does, at the Mental Health Awareness Walk. And so the Stepping Up initiative is really about finding ways to reduce the percentage of mentally challenged individuals in our jails. And right now, 25% of our jail population is in Access 1 or Access 2 mental health situation. So to me, it's something that I think this board should get on with NACO. I have had conversations with Roger, for example, Sherry Monroe, Sheriff Promell, and everybody seems to be gung-ho that they want to get this thing going. Sheriff Promell indicated to me that they are already working on this issue, and as chair of the Public Safety Coordinating Council, I would like to have this board support to really kind of push this forward within that committee, and if it needs to become a subcommittee or whatever, but this is something I want to put some efforts into if I can get approval and bring that back for a vote at our next commission meeting. Anybody have any comments, or everybody's good? Okay, I appreciate that. I'll get that to staff, and we'll get that typed up, and everybody will get to review that. Something of good news, and Emily might want to expound on this a little bit. I was speaking with Kerry Roth yesterday, and we're looking pretty good on some items, folks. The Vietnam Wall Memorial is in good shape on both sides. Beaches and shores for our Stump Pass restoration is good. So I just wanted to bring that up. The Regional Summit. The Regional Summit conversation has been going very good. I just attended my very first meeting. It was an exceptional meeting as far as I was concerned. Eric Berglund from the Alliance was there, and Commissioner Kiker was very candid in his remarks to Mr. Berglund about the fact that he keeps talking about a 5-county region, and our summit group doesn't see a 5-county region. We're actually talking 8 counties. I've reached out to Manatee, and I'll be reaching out to DeSoto. I actually want to do that at FAC because there'll probably be 3 of them there, and I want to talk to each one of them individually. But we're really looking at inviting 8 counties in because that's what we see. And in the history of Florida, Southwest Florida was Manatee County down through Collier County and actually into Monroe County on the mainland side. So that's something that will be discussed also, and it was a great meeting. One of the things that was discussed was, getting other communities, other counties involved in the alliance, whether that makes sense, and Commissioner Kiker was very candid in that he wasn't so certain that Lee County would be so supportive of putting in another $100,000, especially if other counties weren't going to be involved, and also because not certain how they're getting their direction at this point. The concern there is, and I brought this up, my concern was you're going to have a lot of skepticism around our table of our summit group if you don't have processes in place on how you're going to handle leads. And that was a very large concern of mine. I said it probably, 2 or 3 times at the table, trying to get that through to Mr. Berglund, that, I'm not going to speak for my other commissioners. I'm not really that excited about putting a bunch of money into something, but I certainly couldn't support it if I don't know how things will be done and how the process is going to be handled. So I'll just give you that information. There were, I think pretty much everybody around that table was of the same mindset.
Mr. Chair, leads as in economic development leads?
I'm sorry?
Leads?
Yes. That's the Economic Development Alliance, Southwest Regional Alliance.
Right.
And what's the process going to be when somebody says, I'm looking at Southwest Florida, are we all going to see the packet of what they're looking for? And are we all going to have that opportunity?
Right.
So that.
And I'm personally, I don't think anybody's going to really share leads. I don't think it's going to work. I really don't. But anyway, that's interesting because we do have a little duplication of efforts here because Regional Planning Council has a role in economic development for the region. In fact, Margaret Worstel, our executive director, has done a great job with grant procurement and giving counties advice and help. She's helped us. But your group is covering a wide range of subjects and issues, which is a great thing. But we really should probably stay on top of what each group is doing, because we don't want to be duplicating services, you know?
I don't think you'll have duplication of effort based on the things that the Summit Group is moving forward on. They're not going to cross over to like DRI review and things like that. There may be times where we need to touch base on issues, and that's certainly, that's always possible. It's the alliance that I'm focusing on right now, and I don't see a strong support of that group from the other counties. I'm not sure where Collier is going to fall. Commissioner Nance was not really, he didn't really comment on the subject, but we'll see where they go. I just want to let you know where Commissioner Kiker and Lee County are coming from. They just aren't so sure that they're going to be that strong of a supporter this next go-around, especially if other people aren't coming to the table. And other people who can't afford $100,000, that was also discussed. Henry, Glade, Charlotte, DeSoto, these are smaller counties that don't have the same kind of revenues that these other counties have, and so they identify the fact that, you shouldn't have to put in 100.
Right.
Nobody knows what the number is, though, because I don't think there's a lot of folks that are truly that interested until they understand, again, what the process is going to be and how things are going to operate.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
You're welcome. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, and this is something that Lee County did just approve. I attended their commission meeting last Tuesday, and because I was interested in what their discussion was going to be on this item, and it's growth funding, growth increment funding, which is handled through transfer of properties, new construction, and what they've basically done is they've adopted this program. So if I sell my home to somebody who's just coming into the state, there's a baseline. And the difference between that baseline and what the new revenues would be off of that property would be put into an account basically identified for CIP. You have vacant land, that's your baseline. New home, the difference between the two. It's a way of identifying dollars to assist in trying to cover that variance that we have in our capital improvement project needs over the next 20 years. And their version is first year. They're only doing it for 1 year. I have an alternate version that I would like us to discuss and debate, that in year one it would be that 100% of the variance, just the variance amount. Want to keep your baseline for operating, obviously. And in year two, drop that to 50%, year three, 25%, and then in year four, it's gone. And I think that if we could look at that model, it would help us to cover some more of our projects by taking and identifying, because I go back, and I know you're reading all kinds of stuff, but I go back to Dr. Crow's report when you've got a $43 million revenue off of 209 homes, or 343 homes, excuse me, about a $209,000 average sales price, and the cost variance for the expansion needs of capital improvement are 26.7. You've got almost $17 million additional revenue off of those homes that could go towards capital. This method would increase that revenue access for those first 3 years and provide us the opportunity to take on some of these capital improvement projects and move them forward as we need to address those issues. So I'm not saying it's the right answer. We may only want to do 1 year, but I think it's something that we really need to look at. And again, Lee County only did 1 year, but if you look at their growth model, their variance is about the same $600 million difference of availability of funds and project needs as ours is, which is ours is about 640 or whatever it is. So we have a similar need over 20 years, but we don't have similar revenue generation. And Commissioner Doherty was first, and then Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I applaud Lee County's manager, I believe, is the one who thought of the concept. It does not have any adverse impact to the ad valorem taxpayer. It's a cash flow management issue here at the county. How we take that bump and the increase from 1 year to the next in ad valorem and redistributing a portion of that money to capital improvements. I think it's an excellent concept, and the only question really gets down to, I think they're putting 100% towards capital. I don't think they have an operational use for that ad valorem as much as we might. So we need to really analyze our operations first, I think, before we can really get down to it. If I'm correct, Mr. Sandrock, we need to look at that.
That's true. And probably the most significant difference is, and I asked a question to Lee County, so if you weren't going to go in this direction, would you be then rolling back your millage rate because you basically have more revenue than you need to? And the answer was yes. So, we have to keep in mind why it's an excellent concept. We need to analyze it further here because with, approximately a 5% increase in our property valuation, it would be eating into that. Okay, so can we afford? Well, I understand how they can afford, and I think it's an excellent idea. Can we implement it at this point? Is this the right timing?
Right, but again, as we've talked about, we need to really look at what our alternative options are for additional revenue streams for that 20-year CIP. So this, I applaud Lee County's creativity on this one. It certainly gives us something to look at.
And we could always just take a percentage of the growth in revenues that get set aside. There's other methods that we can talk about, but I think we need to start addressing those, having that debate and figuring out what might be the best fit for Charlotte County, because there was a time we had to retract, and the need to kick things down the road certainly existed. I think we need to start planning for that future, and it certainly gives boards opportunities to be flexible down the road if something else happens and we have to retract that.
And again, just to repeat myself, it does not have any impact to the taxpayer. That's the beauty of the concept.
Correct.
It's how we manage those dollars.
Right.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman, and to my comment, that doesn't mean that, it's not year 2 or year 3 where it really becomes, when do you pull the trigger to implement it? And then the other thing is that this Thursday afternoon's workshop is devoted to infrastructure. I think Gordon's got like 130 slides. And so, it would be very appropriate to start having that discussion then. Yeah. And then this fall, Dr. Marlowe gets engaged and takes us through all of the unfunded, including the operational and the R&R, and ways that we can look at other revenue sources. So, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Duffy?
I just have a couple questions about it, but that's okay. I'll hold my questions on this particular thing. But you know what? I just thought of something. You guys are doing, I think we as a commission, I'm not trying to toot our horn. I hope nobody else is listening to this. I think we're doing a good job. We're coming up with some really good creative ideas. Everybody's working hard. And it's so nice today. Nobody's yelling at us or criticizing us, and we're really being very productive. And it's really, I'm kind of honored to be with you guys. It's a good thing. And Ray too, and Jeanette.
Thank you. So I just have one last thing. I told you guys I was going to read quotes, and I hadn't read one for a while. So this one's from Mark Twain. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. And with that, we're adjourned.